Awesome. I didn't have access to record the call, so Katie's going to start it. Cool. Thanks, everybody, for joining the March community call for the DSC community. For anybody who hasn't joined before, I think everybody has. Basically, this is an opportunity to bring up anything that you would like to around the DSC resources and also now DSC configurations. We've got a handful of those in PowerShell Gallery and GitHub as well. And we'll kind of go over what the plans are for those things. Usually the way we like to start this off is Katie goes through what resources are going to be updated in this month's resource kit. And then the only other topics that I have, I've submitted the PR. I've talked about this for like months now, but submitted the PR to bring the update services, basically to bring a resource in following a new model where it stays within the maintainer's own account. And we can talk about that and get feedback. So otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. Katie, if you'd like to talk through the resources for this month.
Sure.
Or at least the ones that we know have changed.
Yeah. Normally I run a script to get them all, but GitHub did some security updates on February 22nd, and it looks like the script isn't running today. So I've seen some manually, though, that I know are on track for release at the moment. X80CS deployment, I think, is actually ready to get renamed. So that's going to be renamed to Active Directory CSDS. So that's probably going to go out in the release next week. I've heard that there's a new release of SharePoint DSC coming. It looks like there's changes then to SQL Server DSC, as well as XPS desired state configuration and XDNS server. And that's all I was able to get manually. But
Does anybody on the call have any that we want to make sure get called into attention that she didn't mention here? Okay, cool. The one that I was hoping, that I mentioned earlier, that I was hoping to have ready by this month, so I have a resource. It was originally written by Rob Willis for an internal project, but it manages WSUS. And I've had it in my repo for quite some time, and had gotten feedback, made changes, but I want it to be the first resource that we look at where we list it in the main DSC resources repo, but it actually can, like as a submodule, but it can actually stay in my GitHub account where, where I'll maintain it there. I don't see too many issues with that. We've talked about it for a while now. So I've submitted the PR to add it as a submodule. One of the things I want to get straight, so since the last time that I looked at it, many of the PSSA rules have evolved. So I've just been going through whenever possible and making small changes. One of the really interesting things was I just took the integration tests example for the configuration and published that independently as a DSC configuration. And that actually uncovered a bunch of stuff that my tests weren't catching, which is interesting. So just for anybody's reference, if you want to expand your test coverage, test it as a configuration in addition. I even had test configuration examples, but the DSC configuration.test repo does go a little bit deeper than what I had in my tests. So that was just an interesting lessons learned. And my dog in the background is really furious that the UPS person was just here. So is there an update to X failover cluster, Johan?
Yeah, it's one small update, but important to release.
Okay, and I still am planning to bring over the Active Directory, the Azure modules from the Azure Quick Start templates. I just didn't get to it this month.
Yeah.
Not
I supposed to comment about that.
Yeah, good. Cool. Yep. Okay, cool. And then we do have like maybe 5 or 6 configurations. I've submitted them all. So they are their whole DSC configurations. I'd like to get some feedback from the community. So basically, they're all under the Microsoft GitHub org. They all end in config. So if you go to github.com/Microsoft and just search for config, they'll show up on like page 2 of the search results. If you go to PowerShell Gallery and use the search for the keyword DSC configuration with no spaces, then they'll all show up there. The only difference is they're published as scripts instead of modules. Really requires the use of the script file info commandlets so that you get the text block, the comment block at the top of the script, and that's roughly mapped to module manifest properties. Everything has to be a string value, so there's no hash table support. That's the main difference. But the main thing I wanted to get feedback on, like, the intent of these is for people who are new to DSC. With resources, we kind of provide like building blocks. A lot of people then like have this fear of a blank screen in their editor where they don't know how to get started and how to add the resources and go through that experience for the first time. So the idea of putting configurations out there is just to have like about a dozen end-to-end examples that people can use as they're getting started. So what's out there now is like domain controller, DNS server, IIS server, .NET Core server. The one that I had been working on before I got pulled away was container host. I ran into some issues with the package management resources that I'll follow up on. And then having a WSUS one would just be natural from publishing the update resources DSC. So that would be a good start. The WSUS one would actually be great for our update management stuff in Azure, because then somebody could just deploy their own WSUS box, have it managed using DSC, and then like integrate that into their update management solution if they prefer to do that instead of update management. So good options there, especially for on-premises. But I just wanted to get, so the feedback I wanted to get, right now they're pretty static. So there's not heavy use of configuration data. For the most part, since it's meant to just be a learning tool, like DNS server has configuration data, but it's actually stored inside the configuration just at the top, which really makes that much easier. Otherwise, they're pretty much static values. We don't, since they're published as scripts, we don't really have a way to include a PSD1 for config data, unless we decide based on feedback that we should also support configurations and modules, and then you can put whatever you want in that module. But I just want to get any feedback, like configurations, like the other ones that people would ask me about that I was planning on eventually getting to would be a Node.js box, a Java box. That's probably close to the end of the list for the things I had on. Oh, and Poshbot. But does anybody else like have good ideas around what configurations should probably be out there that would help people that are new to DSC?
An RDS one might be a nice idea, like a single box RDS solution. I mean, there's a quick start, Azure quick start for it, but just pulling that quick start out into its own script might be quite nice for people.
And what was the subject again? DS, you said?
Remote desktop services.
Oh, RDS. Yeah. Yeah, actually, they extensively use DSC in their marketplace items, so that one should be definitely doable. I know who to ask about that.
Yeah, the only thing we need to solve, the only tricky bit with that one is that the quick start one, and I'm assuming the marketplace ones, use customized versions of the RDS DSC. That's something that I'm planning on solving in the next couple of weeks. I've still been held up with intellectual property sign-off, which should be coming to a head tomorrow.
I will contact that team and see if they're willing to create a repo, like if they're willing to take their changes, if they've made any, and contribute them back to the repo and or publish a configuration. That is a wonderful idea.
Lovely, thank you.
I think Active Directory is also, and obviously you've got the domain controller config, but maybe one that shows a bit more about how to do an actual configuration of AD, OU structure and groups and users. I know that's a quite heavily config data related, but perhaps that would be quite nice.
So this is perfect because what I was actually working on earlier today. So there's marketplace items in Azure Marketplace for SharePoint, and it's really, really popular. It uses DSC, but it uses DSC extension, which we would prefer people start moving towards the service. It just provides like it's like pull server versus push, right? Same thinking. Which brings me to another point that I should get feedback on. But so I've been going through and refactoring that one, and what I'm going to actually do is separate it out and make a marketplace item just for domain controllers, and then make a marketplace item for like a SharePoint farm with the domain controller piece of that included. So what would be the most important pieces of like demonstrating, like if I can spin up from Azure Marketplace a managed instance of a domain controller that's like getting patched, tracking changes, and it's managing the state of the machine, like and specifically in terms of state, OU structure, totally get it. Is there anything else, like some example users or something? You think OU structure would be just the next logical iteration and then wait and see after that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of other bits, like, for example, things you always activate, like recycle bin, AD recycle bin. And I know it's getting a bit heavy, but I've got some custom resources which I want to commit for delegated access. So that's some things that people like to just lock down their OUs and containers and stuff.
Be on the lookout for that one then, and I'll just I'll start off with groups, and I'll start off with OUs and recycle bin, and I'll look out for the access control. That's great.
Yeah, because there are no resources of access control today, right?
No, they're all hiding in my on my machine until I can get access to push them. I've got ones for enabling auditing and for delegated access.
Oh, cool.
I'm slowly trying to get them all allowed.
Okay.
I understand your pain fully. I can relate to that. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's start with that. I think that'd be good. A VSTS build agent box would be really interesting as well, but that's I'll keep that one farther out. Container host, I think, would be a popular one. So. Okay, cool. Is there for anybody who joined, did anybody have open questions about resources or configurations, requests, or anything like that you might like to bring up?
Yep. I spoke with Daniel a couple of months ago about getting the Computer Management resource renamed to Computer Management DSC. I don't suppose you guys know what the status of that is.
Is it ready to get renamed?
I'm unsure. To be honest, I need to catch up with him directly, I think. I just didn't know whether it was...
I think I've seen a discussion about him renaming different repos, but I think he's waiting on the Active Directory DC one, Katie, because you have been away a while, so I don't think he has dared to start too much work until one of them is resolved before he moves on the next one. So, but he also look at, I know, getting a lot of PRs in before starting doing all the renaming and such things. So if there are pending PRs that should be, that could be reviewed or just getting pushed to get them in, I think Daniel would be appreciate that. And if they are ready to, if they actually are not, if there are no PRs pending, I don't see why we shouldn't rename them. So I think Dan will be okay with that, I think. So after seeing his issue comments around his repos.
Yeah, we can get Active Directory CS DSC out, and then see if he can do Computer Management DSC too.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Makes sense. If we had had this call last week, he could have joined the call from the office. He was there for the MVP summit. There was an IM question from Ryan. I like the idea of promoting this. What's the difference between this and examples in the resource project, and couldn't these be composite resources? I'm on the same page. The core idea here is really for people who are new to DSC. Like, we're actually investing in several different areas around this idea. Like, I've heard this a lot, that there's a lot of do-it-yourself. Like, whenever you're learning DSC, you can read the book, you can read the documentation, but there's still a learning curve where the very first time that you use it, it takes a bit before you're really ready to even test it on a server. So the idea is, let's just have like some really clear, like, they don't have to be very complicated examples that are configurations that are like, you don't have to even generate a, like, we could do composites, but then you're still going to have to just write a quick configuration to wrap it. But as easy as that sounds, if you're brand new to DSC, it's just like a foreign concept. So just have a little bit out there. My biggest fear is that people will expect that these configurations are meant to be like ready for just use it in production. Like, that's naturally going to happen, I'm sure. And so I'm adding notes in the comments of each one that it's meant as an example to get people started, and then they can use that as example in their own source control and iterate and make changes. So hopefully that works out. That's the main thing, is making it easy for people who are new.
On that note, one of the things that I kind of struggled with when I was starting out was around being able to push a config remotely and needing to set up all the certificates and all of that stuff. So just my thought would be that it might be a good idea to have a full-blown example, if possible, of that, just to kind of walk people through it in an easy and friendly way.
I think perhaps even, I know we said that the documentation is maybe a bit boring for people, but the on the docs.microsoft, the stuff there about encrypting MOFs and stuff is pretty good. So I think maybe even just a link to the documentation, and then just in the script, just doing the PS allow plain text passwords, I think is probably enough. I don't know.
Got it. That's a really good topic. By the way, I'll invite, I didn't think to forward the series today, but we just brought on board a documentation expert who will be focused 100% on DSC, both the platform and the service. If there's anything that you see as gaps in our documentation, I had been trying to make iterative changes in the docs, first the DSC docs, then the extension docs. I haven't got to the service docs yet, but he'll be working full-time on docs for DSC. So if there's anything that you feel like is a serious gap, please do email me. I'll make sure my email's in this IM window. His name's David Coulter. He previously worked within Premier Support and was focused very much on DSC. So the on-ramp for him was very short. He was able to get successful really quickly working in his new role. So just the docs on GitHub, yes, they are. Yeah, if you go to docs.microsoft.com/PowerShell, and then I think you click Features and then DSC, then that's the DSC docs, and there's a link to when you click Edit, then it links you back into the GitHub repo for those. So you'll start seeing David Coulter show up on the list of maintainers that's checking in code there, checking in doc changes there. And I will make sure to get this series on his calendar so that he can join us for these calls in the future. And with that, that is everything that I had hoped to cover off on today. I'll close on this. We've got some new experiences that we're trying out in Azure, where if people want to do kind of like point-and-click authoring of DSC configurations for managing VMs. And again, this is very much focused on the discovery for somebody who's new to DSC. If you could just send me an email to that email address that I've added in the IM window, I would be more than happy to give you access to the private preview. We're opening that up pretty broadly at this point. So it would be great to, the reason I wanted to correspond with you directly is so I can make sure I capture your feedback. That's the most important thing. But just shoot me an email if you're interested and we'll get you hooked up. And that is it, I believe, for this instance of the call. If anybody has anything else.
Hi, Michael. This is Michele speaking. And I've started a few months ago with DSC, and I've gone with a lot of issues during these months because I started with Mike Hendrick's blog, and then I discovered that a lot of things changed during that time. And now I've created a team site where I'm trying to write down every step that I make just to have things working. One of the issues I'm facing now is that I pushed the configuration on a remote server, and I got from the remote server that that configuration is not present on the pool server. Even I have the configuration with that name inside. So I'm asking if I can submit it to you or someone else.
Yeah.
The errors, so
yes.
that.
Yeah, go ahead and submit it to me, and we'll take a look at like why the machine's not able to find it on the pull server.
Okay, that's great, because I'm trying to monitor the configuration of some Exchange servers, because during my activity as a PFE for Exchange, I have found that many problems comes from the fact that there are configuration drifts among Exchange servers, and so you have random issues between users, and then you, after an extensive number of tests, you found that maybe there's a web config key that is missing, or has some characters that are not correct, or you have some settings on a virtual directory that are different from the one that you were expecting. And so we want to use the DSC in this case to monitor which is the correct configuration. And one difficulty is to find the resources, for example, for power plan, because as you know, you should have the high performance power plan, or you should have a page file with a certain amount of sides, and these are all things that you have to script within the configuration, because they could be different from one server to another, and that is another point of interest that I would like to investigate. So
yeah, I'd be happy
I will
to help
appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah, you bet. Well, actually, I'll add two things. One was Ryan's questions about LCM, but that reminded me talking about pull server. So I've working on the blog post draft for PowerShell blog, but if you go out and sign up for the Windows Server Insiders, just search for Windows Server Insiders. Build 17090, I think, is the most recent. That does contain the capability of using SQL as the backend database for pull server. However, in order to configure that, we need an updated version of the XDSC web service resource. Katie, last time that I looked, there was still correspondence happening about that PR. I don't think it's merged in yet. Are you aware? Like, do we know if?
Is this?
So it would be in XPS desired state configuration. It's the XDSC web service that manages pull server. When I checked on it the other day, it was still, there was like conversations happening in that PR. It hadn't merged yet.
Is this the enable SQL provider or a different one?
It's the SQL provider.
I think that one is soon to be merged.
Okay. Yeah, if we can get that in this month's resource kit, we should definitely make a point in the announcements for that it includes it, and that way people will know. And I'll update the documentation for it as well. But that will enable using SQL Server as the backend of pull server. So, and that's actually, just to be super clear with the community, that's the only item that we had on our backlog that we had in plan for right now. We don't have any other like new features coming for Windows pull server. One of the things that I wanted to inspire the community to start thinking about, like Ben Gellens recently mentioned to me that he might like to create a repo where he would publish, you may have seen Ben Gellens has got some blog posts around like scripts that he's written to automate things like certificate management and more around Windows Pull Server. So he was thinking about creating a GitHub repo where the community would collaborate on extensions to Windows Pull Server. So that would give us Trek, Tug, and the community extensions for Windows Pull Server as like and you know, the idea of this is we want DSC to go more and more in the direction of being all open source. So that would allow us to kind of keep what's shipping with Windows Server as Windows Pull Server in the box and supported for the lifetime of those versions of Windows, which is quite long, and then let the community build extensions from here on out as a way to get things to move quickly. And then regarding LCM, what will happen next, we're ironing out the timeline for open source, but you can look for like PowerShell Summits and PowerShell Summit EU in April. I'll be going to both. You can look for like announcements around that time. What we're thinking, and I'll be clear about this because you know, for everybody who's in the community, we're really looking forward to working with you. We'll probably start off on things like the governance documentation and possibly some RFCs, like in advance of being ready to check in the code, just as like making sure that when the code is checked in, that right away on day one, we're able to act responsibly as maintainers of that. So that should be coming between now and summits, or possibly, you know, opened up at least for the documentation efforts during summits. So that's the current thinking. Cool. All right, if there's anything else, I think we can end the recording, and I'll stay on the line for a little bit. I'm happy to stick around if anybody wanted to connect on anything. Otherwise, we appreciate you dialing in for this month, and we look forward to our continued efforts working together. And yeah, Ryan, I'll see you in Hanover. It's my first PowerShell Summit EU. I'm pretty happy. It'll be great.
Michael, about the update services DSC, what are you? I see it's failing in test.
Test. You see correctly. The last time that I had looked at it, everything was working really well, and then the PSSA rules have evolved. And so most of them were errors, and I'm going through and changing those. A lot of them were really easy to fix. Some of them are errors, and so it's pretty typical. Like the code on my machine, I've checked in a handful of changes. I just haven't pushed them yet. I should actually check those in today and run a new build and see what's still there. But I'm trying to get that done as quickly as possible since it is sitting in PowerShell Gallery.
Yeah, and Daniel asked in your PR if he wanted to help to push changes to your PR to move this along if you were up to it. He said
Yes.
that in the DSC resource rep PR you made.
I will check.
Yeah. So we are happy to make sure update services are in line to be added if you need help. Just tag us.
I appreciate it. I will look right now.
I made a long list for you, so you can help make it better.
Yes. Oh, I've got it. Okay, I found it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I will definitely tag you. I just need to get those PSSA rules cleaned up, and then I think functionally we should be in good shape. So.
Yeah, I think it's small changes needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I just have one quick question before you jump off. Regarding reverse DSC,
Yes.
does it make any sense to start packaging those in the resources, because they're not that big. They're only just script files, and I think that's another thing that I think could get people into DSC a bit quicker if they don't have to write their own configurations.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah, me neither.
So I've seen that the standard seems to be now that we've got separate repos for the whatever it's called, like SharePoint DSC.reverse or whatever, and then it's just got the one script in there. It just seems a bit. I think it just makes the discoverability a bit more difficult. And I don't think they're published in the gallery either.
No, they are. The reverse scripts are all in the gallery, but yeah, they're a separate repo right now. But definitely, the vision has always been to include them as part of the module.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a reverse for SQL Server as well, and as we change SQL Server DC, the reverse repo doesn't keep up, so that would be a good thing to have it in the same.
I think every one of the reverse DSC resources right now is broken.
Yeah, okay.
I blogged about it last month, and I was looking at them and I was going, oh dear, not a single one works.
I would say SharePoint's the only one that's been able to keep up to date so far. So.
Yeah, they are busy. If we actually have it in the resource, I could, as a maintainer, actually make sure no PRs are merged without those are fixed as well. So I think we can have a checklist, a task list for that. Task list item for it. In the PR. If you know what I mean.
Nick, I had just made note to email Nick.
Yeah, we need to sync whenever. I know you're busy, Mike, but we probably should set up a call shortly.
Yeah, we should just set up a regular cadence, actually.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good to know at least that it's not like a dying thing, reverse DSC, because I thought it was quite cool.
No, it's not going away.
It's good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up then. If there's anything else.
No, not for me.
Okay, cool. All right, I will talk to everybody in a month then.
Yes. See you.
Thank you very much. And Nick, I'll ping you right now.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.